We are delighted to have with us today two members of the ensemble Profeti della Quinta. Elam Rotem is the music director and baritone and also harpsichordist, and Doron Schleifer is a countertenor. The ensemble focuses on the vocal repertoire of the 16th and early 17th centuries. They say that they aim to create vivid and expressive performances for audiences today, while at the same time considering period performance practices. The ensemble comprises 5 male singers, augmented as needed by harpsichord and chitarrone. We are very happy to have with us today two leading members of Profeti della Quinta, Elam Rotem, who is a singer, a bass, he plays harpsichord and he's director of the ensemble, and Doron Schleifer, the countertenor. Welcome and thanks for being with us today.
Hi.
So let's start. Tell us about Profeti. How did you get together? What was the genesis of the group? And maybe even first explain the name.
So the ensemble is something I initiated in the time during my high school time. I kind of found out slowly that the music that I like most is music from older times. So I kind of gathered some friends and we tried to sing some old music.
And where did you grow up, Elan?
In the north of Israel. And I was in a kind of an art high school in Kibbutz Kabul.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and the name Profeti della Quinta is kind of a joke. In Hebrew, it's Nevi'ei HaQuinta, and it sounds like a rock band or something. And everyone agreed that we have to change it, but it was just too late to change and just stick with it now. And then when we moved to Europe, we just translated it to Italian, and it sounds great in Italian, and everybody likes it.
And the quinta is what? Is that the interval?
Yeah, the idea is the interval. Yeah, that it was a kind of central interval in older music or music in general.
Mm-hmm.
And we tried to translate it to English first, but it was very problematic to say the prophets of the fifth, and nobody understand what the fifth is. So we tried to do the perfect fifth, and then it became a tongue twister. So the prophets of the perfect fifth was too much.
Yeah.
So we decided on Italian.
Yeah.
Well, it makes it more exotic to have it in a foreign language for us. Yeah. And Doron, you grew up in Jerusalem.
Yes.
And did I read that you were singing in the synagogue there?
Yeah, that was my first singing experience as a child. I was singing in my father's synagogue as a soloist, a boy soloist. He would give me little parts here and there. He served as a cantor, for those who don't know my father here. And from that I had this experience, but I actually was a pianist at that time.
You made the transition from boy soprano to countertenor.
Yeah, but not directly.
Through baritone?
Yeah, it was through baritone and tenor and experiments. And when my voice started changing, I couldn't sing anything. And then it returned slowly in like one small octave between C and C. And I was trying to sing baritone in an ensemble, and then it didn't really work. So I tried tenor. And then I decided to not sing for a while. And I went to the army. And when I got released from the army, then I started singing professionally, and I rediscovered that part that was a remnant from the childhood.
So what's the technique? How do you access that part of your register?
It's not like something you can describe so much. It's basically what people do when they sing very high. They do a chest voice thing or falsetto thing. Some people say it's the same. Some people say, I'm not going to get into that. But the most important is that for me specifically, this is what worked best for my voice. And this is why I chose to do it, because it's not like that for everybody. Some people project more on their tenor range and some on their baritone range. And for me, it just was the easiest and the most natural for me.
So in the ensemble, there are two countertenors, I think, in the ensemble. And
now it is, yeah.
So you're able to sing the soprano and the alto parts. I know in some of Rossi's music, at least the way it's written, it goes up to high A. Do you guys access that, or do you transpose it down?
Yeah, the high A stuff should be transposed down. You can see it from the combination of clefs. If there is a specific combination of clefs, then you know that it should be transposed down. And
So-
they call the voice that was called alto in that time was in fact sung by what we call today high tenors.
Because the word alto or altus means high.
Yeah,
And-
I mean, originally it had a good reason, but at that time it just became a certain range. And these parts were sung by what we call today high tenors.
And the fact that all of these terms, cantus, soprano, alto, altus, those are all in the masculine gender form of the noun. So we forget that these all were originally sung, at least in the ensembles, by male singers, in sacred music anyway.
Yeah,
Probably, yeah.
yeah, probably. But yeah, the singers were like professional music making was mostly by male musicians. Although at the time of Rossi, things started to change, and in fact, we know that the sister of Rossi was a singer, and we also know of some female singers from that time that even sang in church sometimes. So things started to kind of break up in that time. But the default, especially for religious things, was just male singer.
So what attracted you to the music of Salamone Rossi?
Doron, you want to say when you first heard of Rossi?
If I will start, then it'll be a problematic thing, because I was the one who was actually resenting it. I started it, I heard it in some amateur choirs. And when amateur choirs in Israel do it, and basically every amateur choir at some point does Rossi, it doesn't really sound very appealing sometimes, because I mean the setting of the choir and the very, very, very homophonic with Adonai Shomer et Gerim, it's a bit too much for me. So I was kind of traumatized.
Yeah.
And when Elam told me that we're going to do RossiA, I said, not sure that that's my take, but I'm very happy he didn't listen to me.
Well, the thing is that many, like most of the people who performed Rossi performed it because they were Jewish and they felt that this is their music and they're making it. They didn't come to this music from the historical point of view, or they didn't care so much how this music was performed and so on. And our ensemble was first and foremost an early music vocal ensemble. So we kind of specialized in music from that time. And because we were also Hebrew speakers, we had this, I mean, what now seems completely normal and logical, but back then was kind of special. That we take this music, which normally people took it only because it was Jewish, but we treat it as historical music and perform it as we would perform historical music from that time. And the reason we actually did it is because we were simply commissioned to join a recording. So I mean, I'm very happy it happened. It was was the first thing I did in Europe, basically. I just came here and then we did it. And it really opened the doors for us. And until today, we go all over the world and sing Rossi.
Your recordings of Rossi that I've heard are truly a revelation. Doron, you know, I do Rossi with my chorus, and, you know, we have 50 or 60 singers. We're a good amateur chorus. I think when one is going to do music from an earlier, or from any period, you try to do the research. What did the composer have in mind? What was the sound that the composer was thinking of? But then, of course, we have to relate it to the times we have and the performing forces that we have. So I remember Robert Shaw was once asked, I was doing a workshop with him. There were, I think, 300 singers doing the Bach B minor Mass. Yeah. And he was asked, how can we do this? This is certainly not historically accurate. He says, yes, but why should I deny all of you the pleasure of singing this piece?
Yeah,
very good.
Yeah, there's something.
And same goes for Rossi, I have to say.
Yeah.
All my traumas from before, they don't mean anything. Yeah.
Well, let's talk then about historical performance practice. Can you tell us about your research and how you go about determining the sound that you're looking for, and what is the authentic way of interpreting these scores? Do I understand that you sing from the part books also?
Yes. So first of all, we don't use the word authentic because we don't know. It was used a little bit in the 80s and 90s, but it came out of fashion because it's clear that we don't know what is authentic and, you know, what. So we only do things that we find nice. So this is an important thing to say. Then we try to do it in the same, as much as we know, in the same tools that they used. So we use only one singer per part. We are male singers, and we use the original part books, which makes you read and learn the music in a different way and perform it in a different way. Of course, by now we know it all by heart.
Just to clarify for our listeners, this music was not published in score originally, but each part
no music at that time was published in scores.
Right. The basses would sing in a part that had only their music, etc., and then compounding the confusion, shall we say, in Rossi's music, that the Hebrew words are written from right to left. The music goes from left to right, and the sequence of words from left to right, but you have to figure out which syllable goes with which note.
Exactly. But this is explained quite well in the preface for the publication of Rossi, where they say that basically the singers have to know the prayers. So
the reader will see that in the eyes of the composer, it seemed better to have the readers pronounce the letters backwards and read in reverse order the words of the song, with which they are all familiar, than to invert the musical direction from what is customary and have their eyes move with the notes from right to left, as we Jews normally write, lest they go out of their minds. For in singing, the majority of those versed in the system of musical notation are also skilled in reading Hebrew, and it is right for the singers to make sure that the words are properly pronounced in their vowels, accents, and the details that enhance the beauty of the reading, and they are praiseworthy.
And in a way, I think that this is what made this project so closed, and in fact made it also die out very quickly. Because you couldn't have just any singer, you know, to join in and kind of fill the gap, you know, if the tenor was ill or something. You couldn't have like a non-Jewish person to come and do it, as opposed to the Jewish people who were working for the, you know, non-Jewish people, for sure, in the court, and they sang madrigals. they could technically also sing in the church services. I don't know if they did that, but in terms of skills, it was possible.
Yeah.
But not the other way around.
In the non-Jewish music from this period, one could substitute an instrument for a voice if a voice was missing. Have you ever performed the sacred music of Rossi with instruments, with the theorbo accompaniment, or?
Yeah, we sometimes experiment with that. We actually don't know much about it.
I mean, it's definitely something you can do theoretically, but we don't know if it was not frowned upon in the community, in the congregation of Rossi at that time, on doing that on Shabbatot and Chagim. I'm sure that during weddings and other stuff of that sort on weekdays, I think it was allowed.
Yeah,
but we
course,
cannot assume that on about Shabbatot.
If you have 5 men and you need to replace one of them with a recorder, it just wouldn't sound good.
That is
So Rossi is not heard from after 1628. Rabbi Modena moves to Venice and starts a music academy there, and there's even some witnesses that say that they were continuing to perform this kind of music, even with instruments, perhaps on Simchat Torah. But as you say, after that, the practice seems to have more or less disappeared, except for a few interesting exceptions that are found in Venice, in Amsterdam, and a few other places.
And the reason must have been because in order to have singers who have the skills, the necessary skills to sing it, and some of it, by the way, is rather virtuosic, especially the 4-part things, very virtuosic, like definitely for professionals. In order to have that, you have to have it embedded in society, those educational structures that teach many people these things, from which only some will stay and do it. But you have to have it. Otherwise, you simply don't have the people, and then the tenor is ill, and that's it, and you don't have the group anymore. And we know that there was also a plague in Mantova. So who knows? Maybe some people came a bit ill, and then they died out.
Yeah.
And also the musical style around was changing.
That's also true.
And also already in his madrigals has one style, but in the synagogue music is much more reserved and much more conservative, and he's reflecting a bit more to the Renaissance period, and that might have gone out of fashion by then in other cities also, or in Mantova. So I think it was also regarded as old-fashioned anyhow.
Yeah. Although some of the pieces are more in the new Baroque-ish style, more homophonic. But then you have pieces like, you talk about the virtuoso singing, the Elohim Hashivenu, with those long melismas. I remember showing it to one of my teachers in graduate school, and he said this reminded him of violin music, or the ornamentation in violin music. It was like, here was the ornamentation all written out. And yes, one needs certainly a virtuosity to perform those long lines, those beautiful long lines.
It's also easier with one per part.
Now you went to Italy with the film crew, with Joseph Rochlitz, and you recorded this music on location in the synagogue in Mantua and other locations. I know when I took my choir to Italy 20 years ago, we were just dumbfounded by the acoustics and how different that is from most of the venues that we have here in the States. But tell us about that experience of performing the music there.
It was great. It was not the Rossi synagogue, unfortunately, but
Right.
the acoustic was one of the best ever.
Yeah,
For me.
But yeah,
I had
as
fun.
Doron said, it's an 18th century synagogue, and it's the only one that survived. So we don't have any example of how things were in Rossi's time.
But you also performed in the palace, in the ducal.
Yeah,
Yes.
we performed in the palace, and this was
Also very nice.
in the two palaces.
Beyond the historical accuracy, there is the musicianship. I listen to your recordings and I hear the gorgeous phrasing and ensemble awareness as you take cues from one another. How do you achieve that? What is the rehearsal process like for you? And not just the rehearsal, but the score preparation that you do.
We try to listen to each other and make musical phrases which goes with the textual phrases.
We also know each other, and that helps. And we know what to expect, and we know how each other breathes, and how to read the body language already and to anticipate. And that helps a lot.
And yes, most decisions come from the text and flow of the text. We regard the music as an augmented text, taking the text and serving it on a plate of harmony.
So we basically recite.
Yeah, so we think a lot about just reciting the text with notes in order to make the text even grander. And in the case of Rossi, at least the way they describe it in the preface, a better way to magnify the Lord and to praise Him.
I don't think we have like a secret exercise that we do to make the blending better and to make that. I think we've already done a lot of that stuff in other ensembles, and each of us has their own experiences and own secret exercises that we used to do, and we apply it now as kind of more mature people and try to do it professionally.
So, speaking of Rossi's secular music, the madrigals, as you said, the language of those is certainly more advanced. One hears the kind of Monteverdi-ish seconda pratica, some crazy chromatic relationships, and a lot of word painting. You want to talk about your performance of those and how that might be different?
Well, yeah, I mean, we thought that it was a great idea to, first of all, to combine it, because as I said in the beginning, mostly the Jewish music of Rossi was performed only for its Jewish qualities by people who were only interested in that. So we thought that it's very interesting to have these madrigals and the songs side by side, because it could very well be that the same singers who sang the songs of Salomon in the evening or in the morning, depending on the day, sang in the palace madrigals. So it's the same set of skills, the same set of expression, same ornamentation, same ranges, just different subject matters. And this is why also we called our second album with Rossi's music Il Mantovano Hebreo, because it really puts the two things side by side. One, just Mantovano, a person from Mantova, as the Christians would call anyone, and then Hebreo, it makes him also different. on one hand different, and on the other hand, the language of music is similar in both. I mean, this was his novelty, basically, to use the same musical language also for the synagogue.
You don't find the musical language in the madrigals a little bit more, shall we say, modern?
A little bit, yeah, but not in a deep way. Not in a deep way.
Well, he allows himself a bit more to
Yeah,
go
but it's-
polyphonic or to go.
Yeah, but I believe
dramatic.
that it's because of the text. If there were, religious texts that would be as juicy as the Italian madrigals, I wonder how Rossi would.
Yeah.
You can see it, for example, in Al Naharot Bavel, which is a very kind of colorful text, and also there you see quite colorful musical renditions. So it's just the context of it is different, but the musical language is more or less the same.
He was attracted to, in the secular works, certainly some of the modern poets, the Mannerist poets, and many of these are quite erotic. And I know that when you perform them, sometimes it's with a wink or a raised eyebrow on certain words that need to be brought out.
Also, these madrigals usually, if it's done seconda pratica and with these kind of texts, it speaks for itself, and it's a bit easier for us to interpret it. We don't have to reinvent the wheel and think, okay, so in this sacred thing, how will we make it more interesting? And in that one, it already speaks for itself, and we just have to go and go through it.
You have also done, of course, music by the other composers of this period, and you have composed music that smacks of the sound of that period. Who's responsible for these pieces? Elam, can you talk about what you have composed and how you did that?
Yeah, so basically I took this idea of Rossi of using the musical language of his time in order to set Jewish texts. And I was very interested in the early operas, the first settings of the story of Orfeo and things like that. And I found it fascinating how one can tell a story in music. And I thought that in the spirit of Rossi, I might do a similar thing with stories from the Bible. And the first thing I did was the story of Joseph and his brethren. And I took a lot of inspiration from all the composers who composed in that era, especially the first opera, so Monteverdi, Cavalieri, and Caccini. And also with the thought that it could very well be that Rossi did such things for some special Jewish events, and that naturally none of this survived, because we have nothing surviving from Rossi apart from his printed things. So we can really go wild with our imagination. So, what kind of things they did for special Jewish occasions. They had so many talented artists.
And he was active in a Jewish theater group.
Yes. And yeah, as I said, there were many artists, and who knows what beautiful things they did. And for sure, nothing survived. So this helps a little bit with the fantasy.
Yeah.
And we also enjoy that these are tailor-made for us. I mean, how many singers today can say that about early music pieces that we have the privilege actually of having the pieces composed for specific singers and for our ranges and for our abilities.
Yeah.
That we are able to also give feedback and to change some things if they are not exactly comfortable. So
in this sense, you could say that this is
even more authentic.
A more authentic experience of creation of music.
Speaking of authenticity. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
In general, musicians nowadays, classical musicians or early music musicians, are mainly busy with executing music. But back then, they were very much busy with creating music, either by composing or by improvising. So the thing to take part in the creation of music yourself is a very authentic activity. And by doing that, we can also give early music lovers the experience of hearing something new while still sounding like the music that they like.
Wow, great perspective. Elam and Doron, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Yeah, congratulations for the website and the initiative. And thank you so much for having us.
A pleasure.